Good evening and welcome to Look North. Our top story tonight. A man who deliberately started a house fire in Huddersfield, which killed his friend, is jailed for 17.5 years. We'll have the latest from court. Also tonight, as the government announces a rapid audit of the scale and nature of grooming gangs, we get response from our local MPs. As shoplifting cases go up in South Yorkshire, one Doncaster business owner criticises the police response.
There is no police response in this town. Today there is, because they've got some sort of operation, but normally we don't see any police officers here till 4:30.
And we speak to the mum of the late photographer Liz Hatton as her pictures go under the hammer for charity.
Well, it was a frosty start across most parts of Yorkshire, but what another glorious day with mainly sunny skies. But what about Friday and the weekend? Join me for the very latest forecast.
Good evening and thanks for your company. A man who deliberately started a house fire which killed his friend has been jailed for 17.5 years. Raimondas Verhelis was one of 6 people rescued from flats in Hillhouse Lane in Huddersfield after the blaze in February last year. He died in hospital. 43-year-old Marcin Kramarski was sentenced at Leeds Crown Court today, and Carla Fowler was there for us.
Marcin Kramarski was jailed today for 17.5 years for the manslaughter of Raimondas Verhelis in February last year. He was also sentenced to 8 years to be served concurrently for a further conviction of arson. On the evening of the 14th of February 2024, he set fire to a wheelie bin and put it in the doorway of a flat in Hillhouse Lane, Fartown in Huddersfield. That meant there was no escape route for the occupant, Mr. Verhelis, who was asleep inside. And although rescued by firefighters, he died 4 days later in hospital. Now, in sentencing at Leeds Crown Court today, Judge Howard Crowson said Kramarski, a Polish national, was guilty of manslaughter and arson, recklessly endangering the lives of others. And in this, he referred to neighbours in the flat above, including 2 young children who were forced to jump from a window to save themselves. Judge Crowson said, "At trial, you denied responsibility and blamed the man who died, and you must live with the guilt of killing a man you regarded as a friend." Now, it had been heard at the trial that Mr. Kramarski and his partner were staying with Mr. Verhelis, and neighbours had put in complaints to the authorities regarding antisocial behaviour, which had led to a notice of eviction for Mr. Verhelis. Defence barrister Tom Story-Casey stated that Kramarski's offending was closely linked with his drug and alcohol misuse. Judge Crowson said Mr. Kramarski's long record of violent offending represented a serious danger and risk of harm to the public, and imposed a custodial sentence of 17.5 years with a further 4 years on extended licence. And for the arson charge, an 8-year sentence to be served concurrently was also imposed.
The government has said there will be new local inquiries into grooming and child sexual exploitation. It follows calls for a national inquiry, with places like Rotherham and Bradford seeing organised abuse carried out by gangs. Well, today, millions of pounds has been pledged by the Home Secretary to fund 5 local inquiries, with there being a so-called rapid audit looking at the current scale and nature of gang-based exploitation across the country. Well, Ollie Constable joins me now. Ollie, what's been said today?
Well, there's been calls for a couple of weeks now for a national inquiry looking into the grooming of usually young girls in our towns and cities across the country. The issue's been going on for a couple of years, but was given new impetus when Elon Musk waded in, calling for a national inquiry. The government initially said that they would implement recommendations from a 2022 report from Professor Alexis Jay, which looked at historical abuse. Those recommendations included things such as mandatory reporting for council officials. Today, governments changed their position and said there would now be new inquiries. This afternoon, Yvette Cooper said the government would give £5 million for 5 new locally led inquiries. She said effective local investigations would deliver more locally relevant answers than a lengthy nationwide inquiry. There would also be a rapid audit looking at the scale of gang-based exploitation. This audit would look at further evidence, including ethnicity data and demographics of gangs involved, as well as victims. This was her earlier.
Nothing matters more than the safety of our children. Yet for too long, this horrific abuse was allowed to continue. Victims were ignored, perpetrators were left unpunished, and too many people looked the other way. And even when these shocking crimes were brought to light and national inquiries were commissioned to get to the truth, the resulting reports were too often left on the shelf as their recommendations gathered dust.
So 5 inquiries. Do we know where they're going to be yet?
We know Oldham's going to have one of those inquiries. As for the other 4, though, we don't, or how they're going to be selected either. We've already heard from the Conservatives, who said 5 inquiries simply isn't enough and repeated their call for a national inquiry. We've also heard from Robbie Moore, MP for Keighley and Ilkley. He's been calling for a public inquiry into grooming in his constituency for several years now. The government there said an independent review was published in 2021 and a new public inquiry would cost money and was unlikely to yield any new answers. Today he told me that he was disappointed.
This still relies on the local authority wanting that inquiry to take place. So in the likes of the Bradford district, where you still have the local leadership refusing to instigate an inquiry and the government not willing to step in and force that inquiry onto the local authority, we are still in this scenario where in areas like Bradford, we are not achieving what, in essence, I think is fair, reasonable and open and transparent.
Now, there have been previous inquiries, haven't they, into abuse?
Yeah, there has. 3 years ago, that report from Professor Alexis Jay was published, which had over 20 recommendations. The government said that they would be implemented rather than having another inquiry. It was a 7-year inquiry which spoke to over 7,000 people, including survivors of sexual abuse. None of those recommendations were implemented by the previous Conservative government, but Labour said they would now be delivered. I spoke with David Greenwood this afternoon. He's a solicitor who's been working with survivors of sexual abuse.
Many of them that I've spoken to are not happy that it's been used as a political football and wanted the government to concentrate on the measures that will help them and protect future generations, which it appears that Yvette Cooper has done this afternoon.
Well, these inquiries can't compel people to give evidence under oath, so there are concerns that this won't lead to any further convictions. Downing Street said it would be supporting local councils. The statement this afternoon is politically a shift in position for Labour. The government insisting it's not a new national inquiry, but it clearly has decided there is enough for further action.
Ollie, thank you. Next tonight, shoplifting is on the rise in South Yorkshire. That's according to police data. There were more than 15,000 reports of shoplifting in South Yorkshire in 2024. That's up more than 1,000 on the previous year. Conversely, in Doncaster, shoplifting is down in the same period, but some shop owners are not convinced and say thieving is worse than ever. Here's Mark Ansell.
You feel good today, no problems, because there's 2 of you working today together?
Raja is so fed up of shoplifting from his 6 shops in the centre of Doncaster that he's taken matters into his own hands, throwing out someone he says tried to shoplift and attack him.
Shoplifting is a massive problem, and you know, I even feel not safe for my staff as well. And some of my staff have actually started to refuse to work down on this street on Baxter Gate now.
Across South Yorkshire, there were more than 15,000 reports of shoplifting last year. That's a rise of more than 1,000 compared with the previous year. However, in the same time period here in Doncaster, reports of shoplifting have actually gone down. Police put that down to bringing in a new retail crime team in 2023. It's made up of 3 PCs who are focused on increasing police presence in the city centre and working with retailers.
We can go and view their CCTV, which is a big help now, having so much CCTV in the area. And we can put really good evidence together, so that's what we are, we're evidence gatherers.
The sergeant responsible for tackling shoplifting says they concentrate on the small number of thieves responsible for a large proportion of the crime.
We encourage people to report crimes. All shoplifting crimes will be investigated. People try and justify it that it's a big business and they can afford it. They can't. Shops are operating on fine margins. We've seen shops close in the city centre. Part of that is in relation to retail crime, and it's the effect on the staff that is as much a concern, I think.
But shop owner Raja is not convinced shoplifting has actually decreased in Doncaster.
Their figures might show it's gone down, but it hasn't. People are actually fed up of reporting incidents all the time. There is no police response in this town. Today there is, because we've got some sort of operation, but normally we don't see any police officers here till 4:30, because 4 o'clock their shifts change, and you can always see 2 police officers coming down at 4:30 once everything is over.
Shoplifters are being warned that police are onto them, but some shopkeepers are less than convinced. Mark Ansell, BBC Look North, Doncaster.
Now, potholes. It's a problem that we just keep coming back to on this programme, isn't it? The motoring organisation, the RAC, say that in the last 3 months of 2024, pothole-related breakdowns went up by 1/5 compared to the previous quarter. Well, as the snow and ice melted away, we've been hearing from you about the issues potholes are causing on your roads. Nicola Reese has been to a street in Todmorden where 100 potholes have been repaired this morning.
The big freeze has left behind some big holes. In Todmorden, the locals have had enough.
Absolutely terrible. There's potholes all over the place at the moment. Something needs to be done about it. And what's happened to me is basically my tyre went. I had to drive down the road with my tyre gone and then had to sort that, and that cost me as well.
It's particularly bad. The potholes down there are 2, 3, 4 inches deep. It's only enough room for one car, so yeah, it's a bit stop-start.
Hayhead Lane has seen an increase in traffic since the main road to Hebden Bridge was closed 5 weeks ago, and the extra cars are contributing to the deterioration of the road.
Well, the potholes here are causing serious problems for drivers. We've already heard reports of blown tyres and breakdowns, and lots of complaints have been made to the council, so much so that they've had an emergency team out filling them today, but they've run out of tar, returned to base, and there is still a lot more to do.
Yeah, they are bad. Some deep ones, full of water, so you can't really tell. Cyclists come down here, motorbikes, not going to see them.
How many have you filled on this road today?
A good 100 potholes today.
100 on this road?
Yeah,
Really?
right from top. Any little ones, fill them. Big ones, fill them.
Calderdale Council say they've carried out maintenance work on 120 roads over the last year, and that the recent adverse weather has been particularly challenging.
Yeah, it's going to come out in it's going to come out within a couple of weeks.
But Jeremy and Tanya, who live on this road, say temporary repairs never last.
It's just a worry, really, that if it's not sorted pretty quickly, it's going to get to the stage where the whole road needs resurfacing, which it does.
I drive very slowly because I don't want to drive over them, because you're actually driving in them. They're gigantic. They're like this, and then they're this deep. I mean, you don't want your tires in there.
The number of potholes across Yorkshire has been increasing in recent years. At this garage in Leeds, they say half their workload is down to poor road conditions.
This is the third car that's on the ramp, so this morning we had a seat of beefer in, that had a broken coil spring, that's due to the potholes. This is the third car to go on the ramp today, and that's having the 2 arms again. This is due to poor road conditions. It's something that's avoidable, really. That's why customers feel upset about it. They're having excess wear on the car, and it's not their fault.
Councils in Yorkshire are receiving extra funding this year to help with repairs, but it's a massive task and there's a huge backlog. Nicola Reese, BBC Look North, Todmorden.
A problem I'm sure you're familiar with if you're a road user in our region. Now, let's hear from someone now who deals with a lot of pothole-related problems. Earlier, I chatted to Rod Dennis from the RAC and asked him why they appear in the first place.
All potholes are caused by the freeze-thaw situation that we have in this country every single year. Water gets into cracks in the road freezes when it's cold, and as that water expands and freezes, it ends up causing the road to crack further.
And what kind of damage do these potholes cause then?
Things like broken springs affect suspension. It can actually end up cracking wheels, affecting alloy wheels as well. Much more expensive damage. If you're a cyclist, it's a genuine road safety danger, frankly, the state of some of our roads. It really is a kind of sign of decline, I suppose, when we've got roads in as bad a state as we have. Not everywhere. And we do hope sort of an injection of cash from the government announced at the end of last year is going to start to turn a corner. But we've got to get to the bottom of this problem sooner or later.
What's your advice to people? How can people stay safe? Because presumably swerving and careering round them isn't the best way to avoid them.
There's not much you can do if you're a victim, and usually, you're often likely to kind of spot the thing too late, sadly. Clearly, if you do hit one, pull over, contact your breakdown company as soon as possible and get some help, but you're likely to be left with a bill at the end of it. I think the most important thing drivers can do is, if they are aware of any potholes near them or on roads they travel on regularly, get them reported to the local council. If you're unlucky enough to hit a pothole and the council isn't aware that pothole's there, they don't have to give you any compensation. So please, please, please get in touch with your council to give our councils the best possible picture of just what the state of our roads is really like.
Good advice there, Rod. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now, you're likely to remember a remarkable young woman called Liz Hatton from Harrogate. She was an incredibly talented photographer, and after being diagnosed with a rare type of cancer called desmoplastic small round cell tumour, started a bucket list of things she would like to photograph. Well, this led her to taking photos at London Fashion Week, working with some of her favourite photographers and meeting Prince William and Kate Middleton. Well, sadly, Liz died in November, just a few months after her diagnosis, and her family has set up a Just Giving page and so far raised nearly £80,000. I'm really pleased to say that Liz's mum, Vicky, is here. Vicky, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about this. £80,000, wow!
I know, people have just been so kind. We set it up because there is no charity anywhere in the world with desmoplastic small round cell tumour as its focus. So when Liz was diagnosed, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack, trying to find information. And we want to fund vital research into her cancer because there is still no recognised treatment for it. And we want to fund family support for other families so that they don't have to face it alone. And people have just been incredible. People from kind of all ends of the spectrum have joined in to make a difference.
And what's it been like witnessing that outpouring of love and support? Because some people will know you as a family, but yeah, some people are perfect strangers as well.
So many people perfect strangers, and it's brought us so much comfort because we never have to explain who Liz is or why we might not be feeling it, because actually so many people know Liz's story and love her and know that we want to celebrate her. So, it's an easy conversation. They'll come and say, oh, we love Liz's photos, or, oh, how did you do it that day, or whatever. And, it means we've managed to keep talking about her in a positive way, which is what everybody wants, right? We want her to be remembered for the incredible young lady she was, and that's very much how she wants to be remembered as a photographer.
Absolutely. Now, talk to me about this auction that's happening now or coming up.
Yeah, so 12 of Liz's best photographs, lots of which you can see around, are being auctioned at Morfitts in Harrogate, alongside lots of other famous photographers' photographs on the 1st of February. You can place an online bid at any time in the kind of run up to that to snag yourself one of Liz's photographs to have it hanging in your home, and she would have loved that so much.
And how can people find out more about the Just Giving page and donating?
So if they just search Just Giving Liz Hatton, and to complete the first piece of research we want to do, that will cost £100,000. So we're not a million miles away
really
from
close
there now. And I think what I'd really like to say to people is it doesn't have to be a big amount. The site will let you donate anything from £2 upwards. So if lots of people spare a little, then hopefully we can get there and start making a real difference so other families can stay together longer.
Liz was an inspiration, so are you. Thank you.
No, thank you for having us.
What a lovely family. Now, people in Otley say they'll continue to campaign to halt the felling of 2 trees in a local park. Residents now face the prospect of a single lane over the town's medieval bridge, which will lead to further traffic congestion. Leeds City Council says a deteriorating pedestrian footway at the side of the bridge needs to be replaced. It wants to install a temporary footway over the river whilst the replacement work is carried out. But that would mean removing the trees. Phil Bodmer has this.
Spanning the banks of the River Wharfe, this ancient bridge has served Otley for almost 8 centuries. However, it's the 1950s built walkway that runs alongside it which has reached the end of its life. The council planned to install a temporary pedestrian crossing while a new footway is built, but that involves cutting down an oak tree and the nearby tulip tree in Titty-Bottle Park, something campaigners are against.
Because of its age and the biodiversity, it has a lot of insects which provide food for the the birds and the bats under the bridge. And it's a symbol of continuing life in our town.
So far, the local authority has been unable to safely remove the trees. In a statement, Leeds City Council said, "The existing pedestrian footway continues to deteriorate and we cannot delay essential repair work. Engineers have spent over a year looking at potential options." It says there are only two viable alternatives: building a temporary footway, which unfortunately would mean the loss of 2 trees, or installing temporary traffic lights. Well, it's mid-afternoon and Otley Bridge, as you can see behind me, is already pretty congested with traffic. So if traffic lights are put in and it's reduced to a single lane, that will really make the congestion much worse. So what do local people make of the idea?
As anybody who lives or comes from this side of the bridge, coming into Otley, it just puts on so much time on your travels.
It'll mean a lot of very irritated motorists coming home from work and suffering even greater delays than they suffer already.
It might save the trees, though. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, we need to save the trees.
The council says it has concerns around access for emergency services, the hospital and the school. And it believes installing a temporary bridge is the least disruptive way. But campaigners disagree.
The congestion's been there for years and Leeds have done nothing about it. So it's a bit rich, really, for Leeds to actually push it on to local people who've been protecting the tree and saying they will be responsible for all this worsening congestion.
For now, there seems little sign of resolution. More water to flow under the bridge before a solution that satisfies both sides surfaces. Phil Bodmer, BBC Look North, Otley.
Lovely shot there. Now, how much do you really know about the history of where you live? Well, as Bradford gears up for its year in the spotlight, we've been exploring some of the hidden history in the city. Hamara Balm has been taking a look.
City Hall has been proudly looking over Bradford since the 1870s. These days, it's at the heart of the cut and thrust of local politics. But just like the city, there's so much more to this building than what meets the eye. Well, shall we have a look then and take a peek at the places not everyone gets to see? This is where criminals are tried up until the 1990s when the new Law Court opened. Today it's used as a TV set for shows such as Emmerdale, Coronation Street and even Peaky Blinders. I'm glad I've never had to appear in this dock. I've read that the cells have been linked to several famous people. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Harry Houdini was one of them who in 1904 carried out a publicity stint where he was locked in a cell overnight. He was handcuffed and it took him less than 20 minutes to escape. Also, James Berry, who was one of the police officers here in the 1870s, and he became Yorkshire's hangman.
What kind of conditions would inmates face in these cells?
It was dark, damp and dismal.
Everywhere you look, there's evidence of Bradford's importance and wealth. I mean, it's hard to miss the majestic clock tower.
The 1870s, Bradford was to be a textile capital of the world, and they had to have a town hall to symbolise that wealth. And here we have it, a magnificent medieval Gothic building.
And there's beautiful statues adorning the outside of the building. Where do they come from?
Oh yeah, 35 statues. It's a series of the kings and queens of England. Out of the 35 statues, it's not a complete series because 1 or 2 are missing, but there is one statue in particular which causes a bit of mischief, and that's Oliver Cromwell, who obviously wasn't a king.
It's an amazing building, but don't just take my word for it, come see it yourself. Hamara Balm, BBC Look North, Bradford.
Now, a bird of prey which has been trapped under netting on a building in Thirsk in North Yorkshire since the weekend has finally been freed today. The female sparrowhawk had been caught under netting on the top of the HSBC Bank since Saturday. Locals were concerned for her welfare and feared she could die. Well, the fire service was called out to the building at lunchtime and cut a hole in the net to free the bird. Well done to them. A happy ending. Right. Oh, it's been lovely this week, hasn't it?
Yeah, look at the blue sky there.
Gorgeous.
Absolutely fantastic. Quite a bit of cloud and mist and fog to come over the next few days, but of course I've got a couple of lovely pictures to show you. And we'll start first of all last night in the Worth Valley. The fog just developed apparently out of nowhere. I thought that was a beautiful picture, but of more interest is this one. That's Whernside. Now, that's the tallest mountain in Yorkshire. It goes up to about 2,500 feet. Amazing that the snow has nearly gone even there. Now, there is an explanation because we've had what's called, I won't go into too much detail because I'll bore you, but there's been a very low temperature inversion. So actually, temperatures over the tops of the mountains have been higher than in the Vale of York. So, for example, at Emley Moor, it's been 12.5 degrees today. Top end of the Vale of York, just 3. So quite unusual, but it does explain why a lot of this snow in the last couple of days has been melting really rapidly. There we are. I thought it was interesting. Anyway, if you want to send any pictures to me on X, on Instagram, or on the Weather Watcher website, the addresses are on your screen right now. So the headline is a little bit more complicated over the next 24 hours. We're not looking at the clear blue skies that we've had today. We've got some mist and fog working up from Lincolnshire at the moment, but the main thrust of the forecast, high pressure, keeping rain-bearing fronts out to the northwest, but with light winds, we are quite prone in that direction to see mist, fog and low cloud at times. Now, there's a satellite picture, a load of fog across Lincolnshire. Now, that area is now expanding, so although the whole of Yorkshire is clear at the moment, what we'll find is that that fog bank gradually expands, pushes northwards. There'll be a bit of fog developing in the middle. So whichever way you look at it, by the time we wake up in the morning, there'll be quite a bit of low cloud, mist and fog. Still some holes in that fog, though, and that will lead us into a widespread slight frost. -1 is 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So tomorrow's high water time, Scarborough 6:22, Bridlington at 6:40. So many of us off to a grey start. Not everywhere, but if you wake up to fog, it's going to take quite a few hours to clear. But there'll still be some holes in there, some sunshine around, and I think generally speaking, during the day, any fog lifts into low cloud and breaks up. So there should be some brightness with variable amounts of cloud. And we're looking at top temperatures, not the 12 we've had at Emley today, nearer around 7 or 8 degrees, just slightly above average for this time of the year. Then quite complicated for the weekend. We are quite prone to some mist and fog, which could be reluctant to clear. If so, it's going to feel chilly. That's the forecast.
I think you're interesting.
Oh, thanks.
I hang off every word you say.
Well, we can talk temperature inversions after the programme if you want.
That's a date. How exciting. See you at 7:30. Bye-bye.
Did you...